apologize a little bit. It's a bit of a bait and switch. I'm not going to speak too much about Alexa per se. I will tell you that the impetus for the shir came a while ago when someone mentioned to me how they had been in their home on a Friday night, and they said something about Carlbach, and suddenly the music at the Friday night table, was Carlbach started coming in. I don't know exactly. I don't think that they said Alexa or something, or maybe they just had said at the table, this is really great. You can just say, Alexa, play Carlbach, and indeed they didn't realize that it wasn't turned off for Shabbat. And the next thing they know, they were being serenaded by Shlomo Carlbach at their Friday night table. And then the question, it was a good thing, I guess, that they weren't fans of Def Leppard or something like that. That would have been, a little bit more problematic at the table. But be that as it may, the question, of course, is that with all this is really in terms of the developing technologies that we're all witnessing, and smart homes that are beginning to, or more than beginning to, become the norm. All sorts of issues that come up that just didn't exist even 10 years ago, and it's only going to accelerate. And with new building projects, more and more aspects of our homes are going to be governed by sensors and the like. And the question becomes, well, how much of this is going to be problematic on Shabbat? What can be done about it? And I'm not here to give a piskei halacha, or even to give an overview of different approaches per se. I want to, and this is where it will connect to this week's parsha, to give it but it will take us about an hour to get there, so please bear with me, that to be suggesting an educational, philosophical perspective, which I think will be absolutely necessary in order for us to move forward in the years and decades to come. Otherwise, I think that we're going to, that we risk very seriously breaking down into different subgroups, and I'll explain what I mean as we go along. So here, let's take a look at the issue. As I said, before I get to the question in terms of how to deal with these modern technologies, I think we have to have an overview of some basic issues in Shabbat. And going back now about 120 years or so, 130 years, to discussions with regard to electricity, and starting to understand, to get a sense of, well, what is the issur of electricity, since all of these devices ultimately will come down to electricity. Since electricity is assur, as we all know, so then it becomes a question of, okay, what's the nature of that issur? Will it matter if I personally flip a switch, or if it's happening more or less automatically, or if I say something and that triggers something? Does that make a difference? So we have to really start, I think, from the beginning in terms of understanding electricity, and move forward. So the Torah here, in the end of Sefer Shemot, in a few parshiot, when we'll be reading it, the Torah talks about the issur of fire on Shabbat. The Torah says at the beginning of Parshat Vayakel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Let me just make the screen a little bit larger for you. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael vayomer alehem ela dvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asot otam. So Sheishet Yamim Taseh Melacha V'Yom HaShvi'i Yeh Lachem Shabbat Shabaton L'Hashem Kol Ha'oseh Bo Melacha Yumat. So first you have the general prohibition of doing melacha on Shabbat, and then the Torah says in Pasuk Gimel, Lo Tivaru Esh B'Chol Moshvotechem B'Yom HaShabbat, that you should not burn any fire in your dwellings on Shabbat. This is the source for viewing fire as being one of the melachot, and there's a machloket amongst the Tanaim. Why is fire specifically delineated as opposed to any other melacha? Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that this actually is to tell us that the isser of fire, of burning, is a lesser isser than is the other melachot. However, the dominant position in the Tanaim, and the one that we follow la halacha, is that the Torah chose one melacha, and basically is saying, as a result, that all of the categories of melachot, now is not the time to get into where we get the idea of 39 melachot, but we'll just say, as we're most of us are all familiar with, that the idea that there are 39 melachot on Shabbat. So we take that notion of 39 melachot, and each one is in effect a separate isur. So if I were to do more than one of those isurim on Shabbat, unintentionally, bishogeg, where the penalty for doing melacha on Shabbat bishogeg is bringing a korban chatat in the Beit HaMikdash. So for each category that I violate, I have to bring another korban chatat. So if I were to turn on my stove and boil some water, so then I would have to, forgetting that it was Shabbat today, for example, or thinking that these, for whatever the reason, these melachot were not forbidden. I had a temporary lapse of knowledge, and then I realized my mistake. So then I would have to bring two korbanot chatat, one for having turned on the fire, and the other for cooking the water. So that's in terms of the background. But now, one might ask the following question, of course, that why lo tavaru eish b'chol moshvotechem? Why is that the one that's picked of all of the malachot? And I think the simplest answer to this, though you could probably think of other answers as well, but I think that the answer that comes to my mind, at least, is that fire ultimately is perhaps the most basic of all human activities in terms of melachot. Without fire, so that's the most basic technology, the most important technology. So the Torah picks that technology to use as the example for all other melachot as well. That we have this delineation between the different melachot. So then, of course, the question is, well, how do I define this melacha? And I could think that the idea of burning something is just that. In other words, if I have wood or moss, peat moss, or whatever else, coal that I'm burning, so I have combustion, and that basically is turning that material into energy through the fire, and the fuel is being consumed. That would be the basic definition of what I think most of us would think is the melacha of boer, of mavir, of burning. So that is, of course, is the melacha. However, there is an extension of it, and here the Rambam, just to get to if you will, the bottom line, let's take a look at what the Rambam says. The Rambam says here in Perek Yud Bet, Halacha Aleph, when in the overall discussion of the different melachot, Hama'avir kol shehu chayav. If you burn anything at all, and at any amount of that's the kol shehu, you are chayav. In other words, many of the melachot, the basic idea of the shiurim that apply to the different melachot on Shabbat is that the halacha Moshe Sinai, since we understand that shiurim is halacha Moshe Sinai, that the minimum amount which has some utility. So that's why, for example, when we talk about the shiur for writing on Shabbat, and we say that it's 2 letters, so that's because the smallest word in Hebrew happens to be 2 letters, right? There are no single letter words in the Hebrew language. So if I want to write something which has meaning, so I have to write 2 letters. So that's why the shiur is 2 letters. There's a discussion. What if I write the letter I in English? Am I chayav for that? Because even though it's not 2 letters, but it has meaning. That's a discussion in Hilchot Ktiva on Shabbat. But I don't, but I'm just giving that as an example. So I would say the same thing with regard to Mavir, namely, what is the minimum amount in terms of the that has utility? And so the answer is the slightest bit. By the moment that I burn something, there is some use to that. Similarly, if I light a wick or wood, whether it's to give off heat or to give off light, this is chayav. And then the Rambam has the following halacha: mechamemet habarzel. Right, this is going to be the one which is most important to us. Hamechamemet habarzel kedei litzarfo b'mayim. If I'm a smith and I heat up a piece of iron, and my purpose here is to I get it glowing hot, and I'm able to, as a result, to mold it into whatever shape I want to mold it in, but I'm not even going to melt it down here. All I want to do is to get it hot, so that I can then sarfo b'mayim. I can then throw it into the water, and that will galvanize the iron, galvanize the steel, forge it in a way, so that way it doesn't become brittle and is strengthened as a result. Hareza toldot mavir v'chayav. So that is considered to be the mavir on Shabbat. That's considered to be burning on Shabbat, even though obviously the fire itself, the iron itself is not consumed by the fire. Right? In other words, here's not a situation where I have taken fuel and I've burnt it, nor am I necessarily even concerned about interested in the light or the heat that's generated by the iron. But nevertheless, since it is part of a process in this case, and it's an important component part of that process, so the idea of getting the iron, to be glowing red, so that at that point I can put it into the water and galvanize it, that is considered to be mavir. That's considered to be a Isur Doraita of the malacha of burning. Leave the Ravid aside for the moment. The Rambam continues in Halacha Bet, Hamechabeh kol shehu chayav, echad hamechabeh taner ve'echad hamechabeh gachelet shel etz. So if I'm not burning it, but I'm extinguishing it, so then there's a chiyuv of extinguishing as well. And here it doesn't matter whether what I'm extinguishing in terms of if I'm taking the wick of the candle, or if I'm talking about a coal of wood. Aval hamechabeh gachelet shel matechet patur. So if I have a glowing piece of metal, and I want to cool it down very quickly because it's dangerous. Don't want anyone to get burnt by it. So I throw it into water or whatever it is. So that is a Isur D'Rabbanan, it's patur. Of course, if I'm doing it because of a sakana, so then that's mutar. However, im nitkaven litzaref chayav. However, even here, if my intent when I extinguished it was to, as we said before, to galvanize, to strengthen the iron, so then you're chayav for that kibui, you're chayav for that extinguishing as well. So that's the background here in terms of determining the isur of mavir, of combustion on Shabbat. So now the question becomes, we now fast forward from the Mishkan approximately 1,500 years before the
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Why on Shabbat, in the Kodesh, for the sacrifices, all these rules are reversed? We have fire, we kill animals, we do everything that you're not allowed to do outside. It's like a reverse world.
Right. So the answer is that's not quite a reverse world. It's really an excellent question. But in the Mishkan itself, there are certain exceptions, specifically with regard to the avodot which are mandated on Shabbat. In other words, if it's the korbanot of Shabbat, of the korban tamid and the korban musaf, if it's the hadlakat of the menorah, but and of course, let's say if it's Yom Kippur, so then we're talking about all the korbanot of Yom Kippur as well. But if it's not specifically mandated, so then the melachot apply in the mikdash as well. So it's not a reverse world. It's a legitimate question as to why that's the case. In other words, why shouldn't Shabbat apply totally in the mikdash? Presumably, these are psukim, obviously. So presumably the idea is that the mikdash is something which is 24/7. It's not something which is has the kedushat. I wouldn't say necessarily the kedushat makom. It's not that there's a bubble that has that where Shabbat doesn't penetrate, but these avodot which are part of of creating bringing the Shekhinah into the mikdash. So those are necessary to occur even on Shabbat. That would seem to be the reason. But any other melachah, if you go into the Beit HaMikdash, so those of you who are perhaps learning Daf Yomi right now, so the Gemara there discusses issues with regard to Korban Pesach for this year. So Erev Pesach will fall out on Shabbat. So how do we bring the Korban Pesach on Shabbat? And there's lengthy discussion in terms of doing that. And there was even a question amongst the Tanaim, the early Tanaim, that perhaps because this it wasn't totally clear that perhaps had been many years before then, that since the last time there had been an Erev Pesach which fell out on Shabbat, it wasn't clear exactly what to do. But even there, the Korban Pesach, certain elements of the Korban Pesach in terms of being the slaughter of the Korban Pesach, and elements that are necessary for the bringing the Korban itself happen on Shabbat. The burning of the innards on the Mizbeach, for example. Other elements of the Korban Pesach, each person roasting their own Korban Pesach, that has to wait till Motzei Shabbat, was they would wait in the compound of the Beit HaMikdash with their slaughtered sheep and goats, and Be'ezrat Hashem, perhaps we will be zocha to do so as well 2 months from now. and we wait with the sheep, and then as soon as the Shabbat was over, they would go and skin the animals and begin the roasting process. So certain elements are allowed; those things that are mandated to be done on Shabbat are allowed; those things that are not done. Okay, but let's get to the heart of the question, of the issue here. So now let's talk about electricity. And there are several approaches to try to understand why electricity was usher. I'm going to here perhaps begin with not quite in the order, but let's just take a look at number 3 for a moment, which is in the right-hand side of the table. This is a tshuva of Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, an important figure in many ways. I'm not going to discuss him right now, but the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, and his being a seminal figure in the Torah im Derech Eretz movement. But he asked the following was the question. So this is, as you can see, it's 1892. Electricity this is the first decade and a half since electricity has been introduced. And now the question is, Im yesh chilul Shabbat b'hadlakat ner shekorin elektrisha galia lampa, right? An electric bulb, you have a simple incandescent bulb. Ubekibuyav olo, right? Is this usher or not, right? So obviously that's not a question for us anymore, but at that time it's the new technology, and this is the question. And he points out, Kvar diber b'zeh beheskel v'dat hatorani hamuflag b'reinu Rabbi Yosef Halevi b'michtav chodshi shelo. I'm not 100% sure who he's referring to here. Neged chacham echad sheratza lomar.
סליחה, אני מפריע לך, אתה שומע אותי?
אני שומע אותך.
תשמע, זה משהו מוזר, אני לא יודע אם זה רק אני רואה או שאתם גם רואים. יש הודעה על מסך שלי באנגלית, You meeting will end in 10 minutes. לא יודע למה, contact your team to upgrade to Zoom Pro. זה חשבון פרו, זה אקאונט פרו, זה לא קרה אף פעם. קיצור, אני מבקש ממך, גם תגיד עכשיו באנגלית מה שאני אומר את זה בעברית. אנחנו נחכה. אם זה סתם באק ושום דבר לא יקרה, אז נמשיך כרגיל. אם חלילה זה כן ייפסק, אז ישלח להם לינק חדש. אני אפתח בחשבון אחר, אני לא מבין למה זה, אבל אין לי מה לעשות, אוקיי?
לא, אפשר לעלות שוב על אותו...
אי אפשר אותו לינק. אם אתה עושה אירוע חדש, זה בטוח שזה יהיה לינק אחר.
הבנתי, אוקיי, בסדר.
מצטער, אבל זה פעם ראשונה שאני רואה את זה, זה סוג של טעות. אוקיי, אבל תגיד להם בבקשה את זה באנגלית, שכולם יבינו, אוקיי?
Okay, so just everyone should be aware, we all saw the warning message that the meeting is going to end in a few moments. It shouldn't happen because this is a pro account and there is no limit on the time, no time limit on it. But if there is some kind of glitch for whatever the reason, and we are disconnected, so at that point, a new link will be sent out to everyone, and we will reconvene on the new link. Okay, so back to the Melamed Lahoel. So I think it's from Yosef Halevi Bamberger, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not 100% sure who this was. Ein bo mishum havara. So there was a person who already, when electricity started coming out, there were those rabbinic opinions that felt that there was no issur to use electricity because even though there was an incandescent filament that was glowing, this is not considered havara mishum de'etzem haboer hu aptila, because if you're going to say that there is an there is a havara here, there is combustion. So it would be based on the it would be based on this habara of the metal that we saw. However, here the filament asuya migachelet v'hi mesugeret beigul zchuchit shenitroken ma'avir shelo. So here he wants to say this is the chacham who wanted to say that electricity wasn't asur, is that it's in a vacuum, which is why the filament continues to burn. And as a result, that's not really considered something which is burning. It's not combustion in its classic sense. Even the metal of the Rambam, so that's drawing in oxygen, energy is being emitted, etc. This is not considered to be combustion. So the Malamed Lahoil is quoting I believe this is Rav Bamberger, but I'm not 100% sure, says the following, that Dachad Varim Ailu B'Shtei Yadayim U'B'Tuv Tam D'Bahavara Shekol Shehu, and now he gives the definition of what? The Torah Asar Havara Mikol V'Kol Afilu B'Makom Deleka Avir Klal Ki Havara She'asra Torah Hi Asiyat Eish Dafka Below Kiyum Ha'esh. Right, so it's not insinden, right? Incendiary. It's not a question of the Isser is a question of not a question. The Isser is a question of lighting the fire, of the fact that it's and not that it is being that there's combustion, not burning. Right? It's not, that's not the Isser per se. So therefore, this is there is an Isser d'oraita. What is the Isser? So now we'll come back to this opinion in a moment. But here we'll say the simplest idea is that, because especially if we are disconnected in a moment, the idea here isn't the electricity itself. The Isser would be the burning of the filament. Since the filament is glowing, and that is a melacha d'oraita, we're defined, and I have the electric current has caused the filament to burn. That is the melacha. That's not the electricity per se, that's asur, but it's what the electricity is accomplishing. So if I use electricity to light this filament, then the Isur is havara. If I were to use electricity to let's say in a electric stove, so it would also be havara, and I would also be cooking something. If electricity is being used to operate a food processor and there's food in it, so the Isur would be tochen, would be grinding. In other words, whatever melacha I'm doing with the like using electricity instead of using another form of energy, if I'm not using human energy, muscle power, or animal energy, whatever it is, but I'm using the electrical energy, that is now the melacha. The same way that if I were to be turning